it's hard to ignore some of that data that we have. Honestly, the biggest risk for him isn't necessarily his injury history. It's just the fact that he's on the Niners. I'm kind of projecting for him to return week 6.
Injuries can make or break your fantasy season. Knowing who to target, who to fade, and how to approach each individual situation is imperative. I'm joined by the best and hardest working injury expert in the entire fantasy industry. Of course, it's none other than Jeff Mueller, who's Doctor of Physical Therapy, FF Injury Analyst over at Destination Devi, and a rider for 444 and DLF. Jeff, thank you ever so much for taking time to call on. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for the invite onto the show. Looking forward to this.
No, absolutely. It's something we've tried to do in the past, and I think it's really important, particularly this time of year, just to really pick someone's brains and talk through the injury updates, the key situations to understand, because, as last year showed probably more than ever, if you draft Christian McCaffrey in the first round and he doesn't play for the majority of the year, that's pretty much your season over, isn't it?
Yeah, brutal.
So let's start at the top. We'll start with those high-priced guys. So if we run through kind of the first round or so, people who've got some question marks, some maybe lingering issues. Saquon Barkley, currently going 5th overall in ADP, coming off 378 regular season touches plus 104 playoff touches. There seems to have been a hell of a lot of debate over the last, what are we saying, kind of 3-4 weeks around whether there's a touch limit, whether there's 380 touches, 400 touches, the curse. Do you believe that we're expecting a higher injury risk for someone like Saquon Barkley, or are you happy drafting him with the same level of risk as any other running back that's going to see significant volume?
Yeah, overall, I would say I'm perfectly fine drafting Saquon right where he is. All that while looking at, it's hard to ignore some of that data that we have. We've seen, so many people have brought that up of past data of running backs who are coming off 400 plus touches, 450, whatever. And then the next year faltering a little bit. I think, though, it's really important. One, the running back position is an injury risk position as it is. And then 2, especially if the O-line had taken some hits, which Philly's O-line has taken multiple hits. I think that does place a little bit more risk for that running back who's going to be hit a little bit more, even behind the line of scrimmage. So just in terms of looking at it, I look at Saquon Barkley as, yes, we do have to look at that total touch count, and I think there's something there. But also, he's not entering this year. He's not entering this year coming off of any injuries from last year, like Christian McCaffrey. Everyone points to that situation in 2023 where he was coming off a very high touch volume and wound up dealing with calf strain and Achilles tendonitis leading into the season. You have to look at these situations very individualized, because Christian McCaffrey, a lot of people forget because they kind of tune out after week 15, 16, 17, You have to remember, I would say people should remember, like Christian McCaffrey strained his calf actually in the playoffs. I think week 17, right before playoffs, and then re-injured it in playoffs. And he was playing in that Super Bowl injured. And so he plus with his training, he does a lot of sprinting drills, etc. And that actually leads to a lot of calf strain and Achilles strain. And so all that led to, it makes sense for Christian McCaffrey. Saquon's entering this year fully healthy. The hard part that I know will happen, well, I don't know if an injury will happen. You can never predict truly some of these injuries. But if Saquon, say, deals with an ankle sprain at some point this year, he has a vast injury history, especially with ankle injuries, right? But I know if that happens, people will say, oh, it's because he had 400 plus touches. You know what I mean? It's like you can't tie that together, 100% certainty.
Yeah, it feels like if he gets injured, it's because he had a load of touches. If he doesn't get injured, it's because he's a super freak, and it disproves all the other theories around, because he's that elite athlete. I think for me, you're getting a slight discount. Like, let's be honest, the season Saquon had last year, he should be the 101. The fact that you're getting him 5th overall, I know it's not a big move, but middle of the first, considering compared to the start of the first, that is a slight discount, and you're almost getting a slight injury discount there. So I think, any running back in the first round is an injury risk. Any running back that's going to see 20 plus touches a week is an injury risk. I'm quite happy with that. But we touched on CMC there. Obviously, he had the Achilles last year, the tendonitis, and you say calf strains. Have you got a similar level of fear of him potentially being re-injured? Are you comfortable with him similar to kind of Saquon? Where are you with Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, honestly, I am kind of torn on that given like Saquon, I look at, well, he has less overall injury history risk. Where Christian McCaffrey, I would say, Saquon has more touchdown upside, I would say, arguably, on his fantasy production compared to like receiving volume. Where you look at Christian McCaffrey, his ceilings could be higher because he has just as much touchdown upside as Saquon, but way more receiving upside, especially with Debo gone. Looking at his injury history, even from last year, Achilles tendonitis, it's an acute deal. Once it's gone, it's treatable. He shouldn't deal with it anymore. And he's gone through the entire camp. He's the only Niners running back who has stayed healthy, which is crazy. He's siphoning every other running back's health. But I look at that and the PCL injury. I mean, both of those have very low re-injury risk into the future. And so, Stephania Bell had a great comment on Christian McCaffrey. You look at this running back, it's like, yeah, he has the injury history, but he also, he only played 4 games last year, but also he only played 4 games last year. So argument, he's healthy. He's entering a season where he had minimal volume, minimal mileage last year. He's ready to go. I think, honestly, the biggest risk for him isn't necessarily his injury history. It's just the fact that he's on the Niners, and whatever's going on with the Niners, there's some injury curse.
It's mad, isn't it? It's absolutely
Crazy.
bonkers when you think about the wide receiver room, that running back room, and all the injuries on defense as well.
Yeah, it's terrible. So that would be the only reason I would say. I would argue, yeah, you are also getting an injury discount on Christian McCaffrey because he's going 7th, 8th, 9th overall. Yeah. And he's one of maybe 2 or 3 guys who have that 24, 25 point per game upside.
I think if you're in your home league or whatever it is, if you're looking at Christian McCaffrey, as you said, 7th, 8th overall, basically you need to ask yourself a question: do I mind coming last if it gives me a chance to win the league? Because if you draft Christian McCaffrey 7th or 8th overall and he stays healthy for 16 games, you're probably going to win the league because he's the most, the true 101 when he's on the field. Like, the point production is incredible. But you need to accept that there's a chance he could get injured and you could be left with egg in your face. I mean, for me, the way I play, I'm always trying to win. Like, to me, finishing 5th or 6th or whatever in a home league, it means nothing. So swing for the fences, swing for the upside, and let's go chase the guy that should be able to put up, as you said, 25 plus point games on the regular as such. A couple of other, I guess, first rounders that I want to touch on potentially, just sort of briefly. Justin Jefferson has obviously been nursing this hamstring injury. Seems like the Vikings really slow played it, and he's starting to ramp up now. Have you got any concern heading into the season, or is he, because they've rested and treated it cautiously, you're fine with him and he's good to go?
Yeah, this really did sound like a mild hamstring strain, which typically comes with a 2 to 3 week time frame. He's been out. I think they rested him for 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah, very conservative. Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, honestly, I saw some of the arguments. It would be ideal if Jefferson was out there practicing with JJ McCarthy, since McCarthy missed all of last year. But again, we're talking about Justin Jefferson. Our same argument could be made for Malik Neighbors, and no one's fading Malik Neighbors, for similar reasons. So yeah, I don't necessarily. I think these first couple weeks would be the highest risk, and that actually touches on, Justin Jefferson. You can apply that to Ted McMillan. Someone asked me about his hamstring strain. Someone asked me about Juwan Jennings. That situation is also tricky. But some of these guys, I would say those soft tissue injuries in preseason that we look at so closely, the initial risk is really the first 2 weeks or so once they're back.
Right. And
then really, as long as they avoid any setbacks, with Jefferson hasn't. Same actually situation can be applied to Achane, which we'll talk about, I know. I really don't have much long-term concern on them.
Okay. You touched there on the 2 guys I kind of want to cover next. So Malik Neighbors, again, we've got, I think, back issue. There's this toe that's sort of been lingering around since college. It sounds like you've got no concern about either of those at the moment? You're happy drafting him where he's going?
Yeah, just trying to any of those situations, I try to look at upside versus that injury risk. And honestly, the guys that Malik Neighbors is around, even with the toe, again, like you said, he's had it through college. He produced very well. It didn't limit him last year. You do have to view him as this could blow up on him at any point, but also it could not. He could very well make it through the whole season, and it's a non-issue, especially if it's. I think it's a turf toe situation, but obviously it's not bad enough to where he's needed surgery for the last 3 years. So, why would he need it now? Type of situation. Obviously, a setback could occur, but you look at guys like, he's going ahead of or right around Nico Collins. Nico has similar situation, similar injury history with, hamstring strains. Brian Thomas Jr., his shoulder. A couple other guys that are going there. AJ Brown, his knee that was swollen all last year and then dealing with a hamstring strain this preseason. So it just, I look at, this guy has an injury history, but other guys around him also do. And Malik Neighbors has more upside. So give me the higher upside player who has been able to produce through those injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the potential volume that someone like Neighbors could see is, game breaking, isn't it? If we see this offense hopefully take a step forward and he sees similar volume to last year, it could be an absolute game breaker for fantasy. And then the last guy we'll kind of touch on. I said first rounder, perhaps not quite going in the first round, but Devon Achane. Yeah. You said he's, calf injuries. Again, seems like they've managed it quite well. Obviously, calves in kind of media with everything that's happened in basketball and Dre Greenlaw and stuff, people become concerned about the Achilles. Are you okay with Achane, similar level to Justin Jefferson, or would you be a little bit more concerned because it is the calf?
Yeah, honestly, I'm not. Well, I'm not as concerned individually with the calf strain itself. Mike McDaniel actually just said that he's had no setbacks. They're still eyeing week 1, which should be good. Just overall, his overall injury history, I have a little concern with. Soft tissue injuries, ankle injuries, all of that. Plus, considering the offensive line, their offensive line is decimated. So again, we talk about some of these running backs that just naturally the running back position has injury risk, but then you also look at their O-line, and if their O-line is absolutely terrible, they're going to get hit more just naturally. Kind of similar with like a Kenneth Walker type situation. So I was looking at this. I've seen some people fade Achane all the way to like late second now, mid to late second. I don't necessarily think we need to fade him that much, but I think there should be consideration just looking at offense production. If you're between a guy like Achane and Chase Brown, Achane and Bucky Irving, Achane and JT, Jonathan Taylor, it creates an interesting conversation in terms of injury risk and offensive production. But again, the main thing that keeps me a little higher on Achane than where I've seen him faded lately is the fact that Johnny's gone, Tyreek may get traded, and Achane is going to be that PPR guy.
Yeah. I think, again, this comes back to the Christian McCaffrey discussion. If you're swinging for the fences, if you're looking for upside, we've seen Achane break the game and be absolutely insane. Some of the points that he scored in his rookie year and since then. There is a lot of risk, but you're getting the discount again. This is a second round pick rather than a mid first, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing too with him to consider, and it's so hard to predict these types of situations, but I think his fantasy points with Tua in there was like 22 points per game.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
He's like elite level tier with Tua. And then I think his comp last year without Tua was Alexander Mattison. So
yeah, pretty true. So then you also have to look at Tua's injury history. It's like I don't know if Tua is going to make it through the whole year, especially with that O-line. Yeah. So it does create an interesting conversation, but I'm not fading him too much.
Yeah, I think we've covered this on another couple of shows, but like the Dolphins are that boom bust offense for fantasy in terms of would I be surprised if McDaniel came up with something, unique and inventive, and they were a really impressive offense with Tua under center? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Would I be surprised if everything blew up? Tyreek gets traded, Tua gets injured, Achane has struggles, the offensive line is woeful, and the Dolphins are one of the worst offenses in the league? No, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So it's again back to that. How comfortable are you with the risk, the range of outcomes, and just weighing it all up, isn't it?
I will add too, because I don't see him on the list. Since we're talking about injuries, Jalen Wright He struggled big time in preseason, big time. Just hasn't looked good with this offense and behind that offensive line. He's now week to week with a knee, lower leg injury, unspecified. So Ollie Gordon's still pretty cheap. I think Jalen Wright's ADP has been higher than Ollie Gordon's. That's starting to get corrected. But if you're nervous on Achane and you take him in drafts, I would just make sure you have Ollie Gordon as a late round. I think he's going now around 13, 14 or so. Maybe 12
I've just got current Underdog ADP. He's running back 58, 175th overall. So yeah, I mean that's pretty good value right now. Obviously a slightly different type of back as well to Jalen Wright and Achane, slightly bigger body. There's a chance we could see, him being utilized in and around the goal line, some short yardage situations, just because that O-line is bad. And I think that having a back that can break a tackle rather than having to run to open space may help them in those short yardage situations as well. Yeah. Before we move on to Jeff's 7 guys he is fading, if you are finding this for the first time, welcome in. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. We'll get you set up for redraft season, but we will have in-season content, DFS, redraft, and of course, all dynasty stuff you need to know. So Jeff has just written an article. If you haven't read it over on 4for4, go and do so now. But the 7 injury guys that he is fading, we'll walk through and get an understanding as to why Jeff's fading each of these guys. But we'll start at the top, Joe Mixon. One of the weirdest situations I think I can remember in sort of recent history, where we've got a guy that basically it feels like has been injured for ages and we don't really know much about him. Joe Mixon, you're not drafting him. You said in the article you've removed him from your board for 2025. Why is that? And I guess what's the real concern?
Yeah, so I have taken some heat on this one on Twitter. I will say I have been asked not to give details, but I do have a source that indicates it may be a long shot for him to even play this season. He's been struggling with a specific injury that has not been healing well, and they're still trying to get through that. And I think whether you agree with that or not, or believe that or not, I think you have to look at the objective facts. Like these are the parts that I can talk about. Mixon has dealt with a re-injury and a procedure since April, either late April or early May. He was spotted in a boot, tried to get out of it, and didn't respond well to practice. He missed all of training camp, all of OTAs, all of training camp, still hasn't practiced with the team. We're basically 2 weeks away from the season starting. And it's basically, obviously he understands the offense, but it's kind of a similar situation to like Quinshon Judkins, where it's just like he hasn't practiced this entire time. And even Terry McLaurin, which we'll talk about in a little bit, just has missed all his practice, would have to go through an acclimating period, even if he was able to return. But I think there is some concern within the building that he's not going to be able to play this year. So I've just fully removed him off the board. If he was faded, I could see, I think, again, people have to look at the objective portions of this. If he was faded to like around 16, 17, 18, and you're even somewhat skeptical of that information, fine, take him. But I mean, like I was helping a buddy with a draft. Mixon, I think, went in round 8 still.
Wow.
And you're taking him at these places where it's like, these guys are actually going to play. So that's the part that for me, and we know this offensive line is going to be pretty bad. I would just prefer fully avoid the guy who hasn't been able to practice, hasn't been around the facility. No one's seen him. No one knows what's going on with him, and take Nick Chubb, who's still very cheap. Take Woody Marks, who's still very, very cheap, and just avoid the risk.
Yeah, I think his current ADP is in the 9th round. He's dropped 46 points since April. I think that for me, it's one of those things where, in a best case scenario, you tell yourself, I can take him in the 9th round. I can cobble to week 8 or whatever, and then I've got a running back 2 that can come and start my fantasy team. The problem is that unless you've got an IR spot, those end of bench roster spots are so critical early in the season when the waiver wire is full of options. You can't carry a guy that you have no idea when he's coming back. So I'm kind of like you. I'm sort of thinking, I think I might struggle to pass him up if we're getting to round 16, 17, something like that, just a flyer. But in 9th rounds, I can't get on board with that, and I'd much rather let him someone else draft him and have the problem of trying to worry about whether he's going to start or not. The next guy. Oh, sorry, go on.
Even just one other piece of that, even if he is able to return, say week 8, like you said, week 8, week 9, whatever, there's still going to be those several weeks, 3-4 weeks, where he's got to acclimate, get back up to production performance, and his efficiency is going to be regressed. So it's like now you're looking at maybe he's producing for you in fantasy playoffs if you get there because you took this guy in round 9. Yeah. So it's just, I don't know, a lot of risk involved.
I guess as well, I mean, I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but if this is a guy that's not really been practicing for 4 months, there's got to be a significant level of atrophy to the muscles in and around. I'm sure he can do some stuff to kind of keep mobile and keep moving, but it's not running. It's not football. Running back is such a footwork position. Yeah. If that's quite a big thing to just not be doing for months.
Yeah, not good.
No, but we're going to touch on another of your San Francisco 49ers players here, Isaac Guerendo. Right shoulder issue, obviously, missed some significant time, came back with a brace, and then was seen fumbling quite a lot. Are you just out on him? Obviously, they've added in Brian Robinson to the mix. Is that the player we should be targeting?
Yeah, so I actually wrote that article, 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And since then, so Guerendo came back. So he fumbled 3 times in this first practice back from the shoulder injury, was wearing that brace. I still think it's labral involved, could be something else. But was playing in the preseason game. They had him in as a gunner and he re-injured his shoulder. And then more information came out. Kyle Shanahan basically said, oh yeah, we brought Brian Robinson Jr. in here to be our number 2 back. So very bad information all around for Isaac Guerendo. Now, Brian Robinson, you asked if we should target him. The downside with Brian Robinson is his ADP is still right around where he was when he was on Washington, and everyone thought he was going to be Washington's running back 1. So I would prefer that he's faded a little bit more. I see him. I wouldn't mind taking Brian Robinson Jr. as in that backup tier, but that's got to be like round 13, 14, 15. That would be my preference for his value. And I mean, I was helping a buddy with a couple drafts, and I think Robinson went around 9 or 10. And I just prefer other players.
He's a 10th round pick today. As of April 29th, he was going 110 overall. As of August 24th, he's going 110 overall. So his ADP has literally not changed at all in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
And then
I would prefer him over Guerendo, but again, at cost, I'd rather just take something else.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And another guy that you kind of hinted on earlier was Terry McLaurin. Now, he's not necessarily carrying an injury, but obviously the holdout hasn't been practicing. I know they removed him off of the pup, didn't they? And so that he could start gearing up and practicing. Is that the concern here, that lack of practice time?
Yeah, exactly. So the biggest concern with a player like that missing significant time, honestly, similar to Juwan Jennings, although we at least know Juwan Jennings, I mean, he is coming off a specific injury that has been injured twice now in May and was it early July? I have the date in my database, but the calf strain re-injured.
Yeah.
So at least we know he's rehabbing, but he's rehabbing, he's not practicing. Same with Terry McLaurin. He's coming in and he's missed this significant time. He's off NFI now, but again, he's still not practicing because of the contract situation. So I viewed him in that article as, hey, he's going to have some soft tissue history injury risk once he returns because he hasn't been able to acclimate to the NFL period. But also his ADP, it's starting to come down a little bit, but it hasn't fully factored in the fact that they did add Deebo Samuel, and Deebo's looked great. Especially for that specific role in the screen game that they have for him. Jalen Lane, I'm not honestly concerned about him in regards to Terry McLaurin, but overall entering the season, there was a lot of talk about regression for McLaurin because he was more of a touchdown dependent guy, not a ton of receptions, not a ton of yards. It was more a ton of touchdowns. And so now missing all this time, that's, I would say, would be my biggest risk at cost for him.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about this entire offense. I do wonder if we see a bit of regression overall from Jaden Daniels. And, what was it, 80-something%? I think it was 83% success rate on fourth down last year. That feels like that's going to regress quite significantly. As you said, the thing with Terry McLaurin, if he's fully healthy, if he's great and firing, yeah, fourth round pick, that's fine. But we saw this last year with Brandon Ayuk. Missing training camp and missing that ramp up period is serious. And missing out on a fourth round pick, even if he takes 3-4 weeks to get going, that can put you really on the kind of back burner and behind the eight ball in those leagues. So yeah, I think if we see the price drop to maybe fifth, maybe sixth round, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable. But that current ADP, I'd much rather draft other guys in the range as such.
But that's the crazy thing. Even in rounds 5, 6, you're looking at guys like Courtland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, Jameson Williams, guys like that. Was like, oh man, it's tempting to just go elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very pro Calvin Ridley in the sanctuary this year, and I think I'd absolutely be taking Calvin Ridley over Terry McLaurin every day of the week and twice on Sundays. Chris Godwin, obviously, it was a pretty horrendous injury when it happened, but as more information has come out, it sounds more and more horrendous. You've got listed here ankle dislocation, fibula fracture, deltoid ligament repair, tightrope procedure, 2 surgeries. Is this a guy we just shouldn't be touching at all this year?
At cost, he's very similar to Mix. Again, I have a really hard time fully removing players off of my board, but at their current cost, unless they are faded more, they're pretty much off my board where they are. And Godwin's one of those. Because I don't think so. This is an interesting situation. Tampa's kind of taking a unique approach to this. And it makes sense from a conditioning standpoint, but they've actually taken him off of PUP, but he's not going to play. A lot of people saw that and like, oh, he's going to play soon. They've already specified they've taken him off PUP with the plan that he starts practicing week 2. And I don't know why week 2. I'm guessing behind the scenes with the rehab team, they've set specific timelines and their goals for that. And week 2 has been identified for some reason. So he'll start practicing week 2. There's going to be a big acclimation period, probably at least 4 to 6 weeks. So you're not going to see him play until maybe late October. Maybe later than that. And then with this significant injury and the fact that he's missed this extensive time, there's going to be another once he returns. So say he returns 4 to 6 weeks after that, his production dip and ramp up period is probably going to be another 2 to 4 weeks at least. So even if he produces, I'm not expecting him to get close to 100% of himself this year coming off that injury, just with the data that we have, probably maybe 80% of himself. At best, but you're not looking at production until maybe week 10 or 12. So it just at cost, it's just not worth it. And I'd rather just take a Mika.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a hell of a long time to wait for. He's going in the 8th round. We said, those early weeks are really important on the waiver wire. Waiting 10 weeks potentially for an 8th round pick. And even if Godwin was fully healthy, fully firing, he's at best, a 5th round pick? Like that's not a huge injury discount for a guy that you're missing half the season for. So yeah, he's easy to see why he's fadeable right there. We're going to fly through these last 3 that you were fading. So Tajay Spears, high ankle sprain. We know they are a nightmare. We saw Jonathan Taylor struggle with it pretty much all of last year until the fantasy playoffs when he exploded. Is this just, it's a horrible injury? Even when you're back able to play, it kind of impacts you quite significantly from a production standpoint. So at cost, just an easy fade.
Yeah. And he's still, I'd feel a little better about him if he was starting to practice and rehab a little bit more. He's still in a cam boot and still going around on a scooter. So he's not even able to load it right now. That information kind of tells me that behind the scenes. Yeah, I'm taking Tony Pollard, and given Spears' overall injury history, maybe he's able to come back and be productive for however many games, but it might be like 2 to 4 games. But overall, I'd rather take somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I've been higher than consensus all off season on Tony Pollard, more so because I think the improvements in the run game and the offensive line and that side of things is what I'm excited about. Yeah. If this means that he's going to see more workload and it kind of gets him off to a good start, then I'm very excited.
Well, and sorry, one more. Sorry.
No, go on.
Khalil Mullins, they've been talking about him. I think they want him to take a bruising role and kind of that backup duties with Spears out. Well, Mullins is hurt now too, so they're down to they're down to Tony Pollard, Julius Chestnut, and I don't even know who else is there.
No. Yeah, my I've got a contractual depth chart in front of me from my survival kit, and it doesn't go that deep. Who have we got? Jordan. They've got Jordan Mims and Jamar Jefferson, who are street free agents this year. So yeah, nothing that you're expecting to challenge for touches, certainly at the moment. Nope. And then Darnell Mooney, he's another guy, one of these kind of late single-digit round guys. I was talking up Darnell Mooney earlier in the offseason as one of the best dynasty buys because he just felt ridiculously priced. But shoulder injury, still not practicing, and they're not giving us much information. What's happening there?
Yeah, so I more so had him as a fade because, and maybe you can give more insight into this. I was a little more concerned on the utilization once Michael Penix came in. And I didn't think Mooney was utilized as much as he was with Cousins in at quarterback. And now he's dealing with this injury that we don't really have overall specifics on. I don't think he's had surgery. My hope is it's not something that would require surgery later on. So if that's the case, I do think he can return at some point with a low re-injury risk. Typically these shoulder injuries, they don't really cause too many long-term issues. So in theory, he should be able to come back and be himself at some point this year. And I would think early this year. It's kind of one of those situations where I need more information, but I was more so fading it with the combined current injury. He might miss 1 or 2 weeks of the season. And then the utilization factor. I just wasn't fully confident in that.
Yeah, no, I get that. You know, in my world, hopefully we get a slight discount on the price if this injury does linger over the next week or so. I think for me, I guess I get your thoughts around the kind of Penix utilization. For me, I can't buy into that as anything more than a small sample size. Like you look at it, Drake London, 40% target share, 60% red zone targets in that 3-week period. Like if Drake London's going to see 40% of targets this year, I think Drake London's probably not going to be playing 16 games. The Falcons added literally nobody to this wide receiver room in the draft or free agency. And I just think that there is a kind of wide receiver 3-4 type role in terms of fantasy type role for Darnell Mooney sat there waiting for him. If you're in the 9th round and you're looking for somebody that's got the potential to be, your wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, then yeah, I completely wouldn't be drafting Darnell Mooney. But as a, I guess, medium floor, medium ceiling type option that you want to be at safety, then yeah, I'm okay with Mooney. And if I'm going to get a slight discount, he's going wide receiver 52 at the moment. If I can get him into double-digit rounds, I'd be much more comfortable with that. Now, the final guy that you were fading, I'm really intrigued by because Jaden Reed has been a guy that I've been higher than consensus on over the last kind of 3 years. Loved him as a prospect coming out, have obscene volumes of shares of him in Dynasty. So I was a little bit concerned to see him pop up on this list. So what is it about the foot sprain that has you concerned?
Yeah, well, so he's also still in the cam boot. He hasn't been able to practice, and we don't know 100% again what it is. And with the foot, there's so many options that it could be. Just the fact that he's missed this extensive amount of time. Foot injuries are tricky. I mean, again, as we've talked about all these, once they return, it could very well lead to a production dip for a quarter of the season, if not longer, with higher re-injury risk than, say, a hamstring or a calf injury, something like that. And again, similar situation. Anytime I'm fading these kind of players from an injury standpoint, I always want to look at utilization. So if it's someone with that risk who I know is on the field in 2 wide receiver sets, I know is on the field a consistent chunk of time getting a high target volume, high target share, and yards per route run, it's someone who I kind of look at and say, you know what, the injury risk is there, but given the utilization and high upside, on a weekly consistent basis at their cost, I'm in on them. And I just don't see that with Reed. I don't think he's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets. I think it's going to be Matthew Golden and probably Dobbs. I think the Packers themselves are concerned on the injury history as well. given all that information. And I think he's in his last year of the contract. They haven't extended him yet. So I just putting all the pieces together and at cost, I kind of view Jaden Reed as more of a best ball guy versus someone I'd want at cost in a redraft league.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you look at his production early part of last year towards the back end of last year, it was very much chalk and cheese. Do you, with someone like Jaden Reed, where he is, as you said, he's a 70% snap share guy. He's almost that week in, week out. He plays out of the slot. The volume that he sees is tends to be in that short to intermediate area of the field, a lot of underneath work. He sees a lot of manufactured touches sort of in the run game, in the screen game, that sort of stuff. Almost what we used to call a gadget player, but he's kind of gadget plus now. That is a lot of short area quickness, a lot of change of direction. Do you view these foot, ankle, whatever it ends up, is that likely to impact someone like him more than it would someone like, I don't know, a DK Metcalf or, an Alec Pierce that is just a straight line? They're going to run 9 routes 60% of the time. Maybe the rest is going to be a post or something like that. Do you view these injuries impacting those types of players differently, or is it kind of across the board that is a concern?
Yeah, I mean, anytime it's so hard to. I honestly don't have that much knowledge base into every single route that all these wide receivers run. But in terms of ankle injuries, anytime you're doing more cutting, more change of direction, there's higher risk involved just from a stability standpoint. And then in terms of yak and all that. So yeah, I would say that would give me more risk or a higher injury risk profile for a guy like Jaden Reed versus someone like Cortland Sutton, who's coming off an ankle injury. I wouldn't view them necessarily the same because of their role.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you touched on, Cortland Sutton's going to be on the field for 100% of snaps. If he's slight ding in production, hopefully the volume's still going to be there. The snap share's still going to be there. Jaden Reed has a narrower kind of thing to stretch as such in terms of the range of outcomes are much more varied because he's on the field less and that kind of thing. So before we dive into the last couple of guys I want to pick your brain on, again, if you've made it this far, haven't hit the subscribe button, help us out, hit subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and help us grow the sanctuary. So the last 3 guys I just want to pick your brains on, I think these should all be fairly straightforward from what it sounds like. Sam Laporta, I don't think we've necessarily found out exactly what it was. It was just something mild, something minor. He feels like he's a player that's kind of consistently gets banged up. Do you have any concerns about him? Obviously, tight end 4, 7th round pick. He's that kind of best of the rest at tight end at the moment. Are you happy with that price, or are you concerned with this potential injury?
I personally have very little Sam Laporta, and I not necessarily because of the injury, but because the projected utilization within the new offense with John Morton there and Ben Johnson gone. And I've always viewed Sam Laporta more of kind of like a more touchdown dependent type of player. And at cost, I think I would rather take like an Evan Ingram, although I know I've seen some recent risk on him given snap share and all that against preseason. We'll see. But like Tucker Kraft, Mark Andrews, some of those guys are going after Jake Ferguson. Some of those guys are going well after Sam Laporta. What I'm hoping, again, like you said, I think it was mild because he only missed maybe 2 practice days, and then he was back that next Monday. All I knew was it was a mild lower body injury, nothing else. He does have a history of lower body injuries and knee injuries. Last year, he actually got injured in preseason, and it hampered his production for the first month of the season. So my hope is essentially that doesn't happen this year. And I don't think it would. I think he would have missed more time. He missed a significant more amount of time last year in preseason leading up to the season. So yeah, just from an injury standpoint, I'm not necessarily concerned on this specific for Sam Laporta.
Okay, awesome. And then Brandon Ayuk, I think Kyle Shanahan said he's targeting week 6 as that return date. Are you expecting a prolonged and kind of struggles when he does return, or would you expect him to be peak kind of 2023 Brandon Ayuk when he does get back on the field?
I would say somewhere in between. I don't think we can expect 2023 production probably until very end of this season, if not just next year, once he returns. The more and more information that's come out and the time frame and the fact that is going to sound odd given the amount of injuries that the Niners have had this preseason already. But I think the staff, the training staff, rehab, medical staff have taken a much more conservative approach with some of their injured players. So yeah, I think Ayuk, I think he could return week 5 just from a time frame standpoint. But I think what they're doing is, because week 5 is a short week, they play the Rams, I think, on Thursday night. So it sounds like they're trying to give him one extra week, like a longer period of time to get back. I'd be more concerned on his production if I didn't know that he's already been, whether it's against the rules or not, Niners might actually get fined for this, but he's been getting some routes in with Brock Purdy, and he's been getting some of that timing down. I think that's more important than anything for his return. Because again, like you mentioned earlier with the contract holdout last year, he didn't get that time in. And with Shanahan's system, like we're seeing with Ricky Pearsall, it's all about timing. It's all about, getting timing and chemistry down, and he's missed that chunk of time. So it's not in-game reps, it's practice reps, but at least he's getting it in at least. I'm kind of projecting for Ayuk him to return week 6, and then probably a good 2 to 4 week ramp up until he's fantasy viable.
Right. Okay. And yeah, those 49ers injury reports and approach to injuries, it's hilarious year in, year out. And it'll be interesting to see if anything gets addressed of it. And then the final one is kind of slightly laughable before we get you out of here is the Matthew Stafford back injury. It feels like this is a year-long saga. It feels like we're probably going to have this every single year that he plays. It feels like maybe this was slightly veteran related and he just didn't want to practice. And now he seems almost like he's at every practice and not experiencing any issues. Are you concerned about him as potential re-injury? Are you just thinking that this is just, he's old, he doesn't want to practice, and he's just going to get out on the field, play games and be good to go?
No, so out of all the quarterbacks, Stafford has the highest injury risk for me. Given I do think the injury is real. I think it's a disc irritation, disc herniation. Well, we know that it is. That, we saw some reports that they haven't talked about surgery, but they've been doing some biologics to try to get the inflammation down. Discs are tricky. So it's great to see that he's back to practice, but I would caution everybody on overestimating that, because there's one thing of getting back to full practice reps, and he's not going full speed yet. But especially for discs, because the fibers are aligned kind of diagonal, rotation is key. And especially for a quarterback, right hand, throwing quarterback, throwing athlete, rotation is key for their performance, for their ability, especially to throw a ball accurately and with good velocity. And so there's risk that leads to irritation. The disc has likely been healing, trying to heal, scarring over, but that tissue is going to be weakened for a prolonged period of time, 3 to 6 months probably. My biggest concern with him is not necessarily just with that rotation, but when he gets hit. How does his body respond? How does that disc respond? Especially with, I think their left tackle, is it Alaric Jackson, has been dealing with something, I think blood clots or something. He's been out though. So his blindside protection, we just don't know how that's going to be. If he takes a hard shot to the back, sorry for the phrasing there, but if he takes a big hit, that we don't know how the disc is going to respond. So it's basically one of these situations where he could be great until all of a sudden he's not, and then he's out for a significant period of time. So given that, and on the flip side, if he happens to avoid re-injury, he plays 17 games and he's fine. So it's like one of those situations, highly volatile. At least for Stafford's price, he's very cheap. But we know Puka's not. We know Devonta's not necessarily cheap. I think he's still going around 4. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. I don't mind the fading of Puka, past those guys like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Nico, fading Puka from, I think he's going pick 7, 8, maybe even into like the 11, 12 turn or early second.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think you mentioned the Alaric Jackson injury. It shows its concern because the Rams have gone out and signed DJ Humphries, who's kind of a potential backup left tackle should Jackson not be healthy week one. He's not good. So yeah, I think as you said, I still in Superflex leagues, I still quite like Matthew Stafford as that late round dart throw because given his history, given the way he kind of sucks it up and carries on and plays through pretty much anything. I feel like you can get solid QB2 production for sort of QB3 prices, really. But as you said, if there is any impact, maybe it's to the receiving core and those high-priced wide receivers rather than to Matthew Stafford's value overall. But that is it, Jeff. Thank you ever so much for joining. It has been absolutely invaluable being able to pick your brains and understand these really important kind of injury situations and players that could be impacted. Remind everybody that is if watching, where can they find you, and of course, where can they find your work?
Yeah, on Twitter or X at JMThrivePT. I do a lot of in-game injury analysis, and then throughout the week, and then I write articles for 4for4 DLF. There will be a quarterly series, Dynasty Injury Forecast for DLF, and then Destination Devi, the injury podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much. It's we're huge fans of yours in the sanctuary, and I really appreciate you taking time. Go and check out Jeff's work if you haven't, because it is very useful and keeps you keyed up for all those important injury situations throughout the season.